Okay, recording. Okay. Okay. So what I'm thinking about for working like at a university, I think demands would be like where to sit, like situating yourself in the classroom with the deaf student. Um, it's a 3 hour class, so that seems like it could be demanding, but it's a good thing that there's a team. Um, I think it's good that it's a team with someone that's in the deaf community. That's good. To prepare for it, um, it's good that we have information about the course work and the deaf student. Um, I think for most of the controls for this would be hmm, um, like just being able to have meetings with your team beforehand, which is helpful. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Um, hmm, I feel like another control that you could use is since you don't know one of the interpreters' Facebook, you could just like kind of see their work like through their social media, see how they interact with other interpreters, look at their portfolio. Um, Definitely come in early to meet this person beforehand. Um, yeah, I think that is 3 minutes. Yes, it is 3 minutes. Next one. Okay. Waiting for the second. So for what I'm thinking is, she's not formally trained, so that's an issue. Not saying that it's horrible, but it's definitely some things that she's not gonna know, even though she might have picked up a lot of things on her way through 20 years of interpreting. Wow. And plus she's a coda, I think it said. Um, if she's exhausted, her work may not be as good. So I would probably tell her, like, strategize uh, have some strategies for her not having to like overwork herself, especially if she's exhausted, because the message isn't gonna get through to the deaf client as well as it would if she wasn't exhausted and wanted to go home. Um, I I think maybe I wouldn't say that she's unprofessional, but um, she's just, I don't know. It's probably not as professional to introduce yourself and talk about how tired you are. Even if you are tired, I guess that's good information. It would depend on like how she's presenting it to her team member. Um, I think it's important that she's actually being honest about this, but it's going to be more strain on the other interpreter, which is me in this scenario. Um, it's probably best for her to, sorry, roommates. It's probably best for her maybe to see if there's an option to like get another person to sub for her or kind of lay back more so that her exhaustion doesn't interfere with the whole process of getting the information across to the deaf client. Um, I don't know. Thinking a lot of demands is going to be that a lot of the issues are going to be on me per se. Gonna have to carry a lot of the weight. So um, probably strategize like how future assignments with her would be if she's going to be exhausted like all the times, like if she has a long drive to get to the school or she has a long work day before. um, Definitely coming up with strategies would be a control for the main demand that she's going to be exhausted and as the interpreter you're going to have to carry a lot of her weight. Oh yeah, that's 3 minutes. Okay, next prompt. Here's the strength. Okay. Okay. What I'm thinking is, she seems to not be as, not, I wouldn't say reliable, but you can tell that she's not used to working in a team, which is kind of hard on the interpreter because she can't really carry the whole thing, even though she's attentive, and it's great that she's able to feed and switch off every 20 minutes. That seems great. Um, but leaving 40 minutes early seems inappropriate. I She didn't say if it was an emergency or not. That it was just that something came up. Um, I think this isn't a healthy working place right now for me. I mean, if I was in this situation, I definitely would respond by saying, um, I would agree to work to rest the 40 minutes and then switch off. But definitely the next meeting I would have with her, I would definitely tell her how that's not okay and that it's kind of unacceptable. Um, but at that moment, I feel that it would be uh, more of a problem to not um, have the 40-minute break and then let her leave. Um, I mean, as an interpreter, you have that commitment, but if something comes up and it's serious, I feel like you should be able to work with your team for that and let them go and take care of whatever they need. Um, it's definitely something I feel I would need supervision for after, just like to brainstorm some options or ways to approach it. Because it's only been 2 weeks, and I feel like this is the sort of issue that like you would bring up with another colleague to maybe brainstorm like ways that to make this work. She's definitely, I feel, taking advantage a little. Um, but yeah, for I think what would influence my decision to say yes is that I would be worried that if it's an emergency, she really needs to leave. Um, and plus, you wouldn't want to mess with the flow of the class, especially because that'll affect the deaf client. And I would definitely get the deaf client involved, like inform them that the second interpreter has to leave, and probably brainstorm some options. If that happens again, maybe bring it up. But at this moment, I feel like just talking to her and letting her know that is not okay would be the best option, and then going through with it. And yeah, 3 minutes. Um, at this point, I am thinking that maybe it would be time to maybe contact the agency and switch in interpreting teams. Maybe talk about maybe getting someone to replace her, or maybe you stepping out of that assignment. Um, I feel like since this is my first year, I would need someone more there that is more supportive. Um, I feel like at graduation, that point, you have skills, but you wouldn't have enough where you can carry a 3-hour class on your own. Um, I would respond to her and say that it's unprofessional to schedule another assignment during a time that you already have a commitment. Um, that definitely shows that she hasn't gone through proper training, because that's something that you wouldn't do and definitely would learn through a program. Uh, I would talk to her if this is the second time and it apparently is not getting through to her that this is an issue. Um, I would definitely let her know I would keep communicating with the deaf client at all times, because this is going to affect their learning. So I would say that the interpreter has to leave again, and probably come up with some strategies where, 40 minutes isn't a lot, but also that's a lot of information that you're giving. Um, yeah, so I would go to supervisor or someone who's over it and just let them know that it's not working with me and Leona, and that um, it's unprofessional, that she isn't staying the full time, and she's scheduling assignments while she already has a commitment. To her in that moment, I feel that I would go along with it, because again, I wouldn't want to rock the boat and have her there upset because she cannot leave, and that would infect the message and the process. And I would want to, because I value equal access, not have to be shuffling around and figuring things out while the class is going on and affecting the deaf client, even though this is happening before. It's just, I wouldn't want to get in the way of that process. I think I think it's important that I communicate all of my issues with her, doing that to Leona before I take action, just so that she's not caught off guard and doesn't feel like, oh, you're like feeling attacked, or feel like she could have changed it if she knew information. But since this has happened twice and I've talked to her twice about it, it's definitely like time to contact the agency and let them know, be like, hey, this is what's going on. Um, I need to be taken out of this assignment, or she needs to be switched with someone else because it's not professional. So, yeah, that's what I would do. All right. Um, I am thinking that that's unprofessional of Juana. To bring up another person, like, even if we both know that she's unprofessional, it's unprofessional for her to say it in that environment. Um, it's, I mean, very possible that a deaf consumer can actually see her talking about Leona, and it could affect the way they view her, and also they can bring it back to the deaf community, and that can spread. And it's just not a, a professional way to talk about it and discuss another colleague. I think it would be important for me to um, definitely respond to Alana in a way that's like professional, but also like letting her know that it's not professional. And as a professional, I would make it clear that that's not the kind of conversation I would want to have in that environment. If we were talking about it in a constructive way, like brainstorming ways, to work with her, like knowing that she's unprofessional, then it would be okay, because we'd be talking about strategies if we were all in, like, all three of us were in a team. But since we're not constructively talking about it, this is pretty much just one of bad mouthing her to another colleague. I wouldn't feel comfortable um, having the conversation and continuing and just like adding on to what she's saying, even though I personally would feel that, yes, one is unprofessional. Um, I wouldn't want to talk about it with another person, especially if it's not in the context of supervision or sorry, supervision, or I don't know, talking about it with the supervisor, someone who it wouldn't trickle down to other colleagues. And you don't want to be a person that's spreading rumors. It's very horizontal violency. I would just tell her that it's unprofessional, and I would say that's not the kind of conversation I want to be in, not in the platform, not around where potentially someone else could see it and think bad things about another colleague who's, I mean, even if they're unprofessional, they're also trying their best. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Just only, I feel like it's only constructive if we're talking with Leona and just like, hey, like letting her know that this is like the things you've been doing isn't professional, and then having like a very, but I don't want to say positive, but like a brainstorming kind of conversation, like how can we fix this, what are some like what are some controls that you can do to deal with this, even if it's hard on me at that moment. um I feel like this, from what Juana is saying, I would probably watch out for her and make sure that this isn't a theme with her, like make bad mouthing colleagues behind their back, um, because that could be an issue. Because I don't want to like make a mistake and then she goes out and tells other people that I made that mistake or slip up. Definitely give her another chance, but like if it's a theme, maybe not have assignments with her because it would interact with my personal values. Um, and you just don't want to put yourself in that situation where someone could say that you're spreading rumors about someone. So yeah, I would definitely talk with Lana about it and be like, hey, that's unprofessional, or like, we don't want to talk about that now. And just in a way that it wouldn't offend her so that, she wouldn't react in a bad way. But also, let's make it completely clear that you don't want to be in that situation. Um, yeah, that's it. All right, I am gonna start the timer over. I think what I learned about myself in this process, is I have a lot of, I feel like I can look at this from a point of view where I've made mistakes, and I know that like it's important to give people a second chance, even though I feel like most times, not always, like it's not a rule, it's an exception. It's the exception that sometimes people do show themselves when the first time you meet them, like you get to know the type of person it is with the first interaction. Um, the first time that she had to leave 40 minutes late, I that would click to me like, this is definitely not as a professional person that I would want to be with, but also I think I would definitely give another chance, because if you do it once then it's fine, but like if it's a continuous thing, you kind of know where they're standing. They don't value your time as much as you would want your team member to, and they don't value the time of the deaf client, and it's definitely very telling. I feel like during this process and like looking at the situation, a lot of my decisions were based on not affecting the access that the deaf client would want, and also just like forgiveness, because we all make mistakes. Um, I also might be clouded by my own, like, thing what just happened recently. But yeah, I think everybody needs a second chance, but also there is a limit. It's not always going to be like, hey, make this horrible mistake once, but I'm going to forgive you, and then you can like do it again. It's more like, saying like again. It's more in a sense that you can forgive a colleague, but like value that everybody makes mistakes, and my value is like it's in second chances, but also not wanting to rock the boat because equal access is important and classes are hard already, and if you like affect the process of that, like sharing information with the deaf client, then it's definitely a problem. A lot of what influenced me through the process, I think, is my own personal experience with making big oopsies and wanting other people to forgive me, and um, definitely looking at it from the perspective of the person that's doing the big mistake at the time. Um, but I think, I mean, it's, I feel like my decisions are mostly influenced by forgiveness, but also by limits. I feel like at some point you have to stop. You can't forgive to the point where you're making excuses for someone else. So I feel like forgiveness is fine, and like if it happens once or twice, then it's okay. It's like you have room for forgiveness there. But then if it shifts to like this continuous thing, I feel like that's when you have to draw limits, and you have to be like, okay, so this is affecting my well-being and my process, and especially first years in interpreting, I hear super hard. So having support is very important, and if you don't have a team that supports you, I feel like it would be really hard, and you would need to make decisions based on not only that person, but you have to think about yourself and the deaf client at that moment. You have three people you're thinking about at the same time, and you just kind of have to, prioritize one at a time. um, I feel like ethically and like professionally, it will affect my growth as a person that can forgive but also has limits to that forgiveness. Not saying that, I'm just gonna be like, hey, you messed up twice and that's the limit, no more, and that's it. Just more like knowing limits, that it can't just be excuses. um I really value equal access, and I think if you're in a situation where the deaf client isn't getting the best out of you, then that's an issue that you need to work out, especially if it's with a team. Um, Even though you don't have the same values at the time, it's important that, oops, well, that's it. It's important that you be able to communicate that. Yeah, and super uh, quick. One of the main things that I feel I also valued was communication, which is really important as an interpreter. Okay, that's the end. Oh, yay, I did it. Oh, what?